I was joking with Josiah when I first came in. I said, 4 minutes. I came in 4 minutes to 7 o'clock. I was wondering if I was making you nervous or not. I was looking over my notes for, the 100th time, and, it's 6:30. I better get moving. To say I'm nervous is an understatement. A lot of emotions. Excited, nervous, scared, happy. You reflect back on the first time I came into this church, 2008, and where I was, who I was a completely different person. I've had at least two people who I've known from this church say, you are a different person than when you started. And I take that as a compliment, I guess, because it means I grew. So it's very exciting to hear that. Like, it's wild to think, if you would have told me when I came in here 2008, one day you're gonna travel, and that seems weird to me too. Just, I think Pastor, you said stuff like that too. Whereas, you're back in your meat cutting days. If you were told that you were going to India and that you were going to have all of the spiritual sons and daughters that you do, I think you wouldn't have believed it either. It's amazing. It's only God could do that. It's amazing. So needless to say, because in a couple weeks here, I think the countdown is 2 weeks. It's 15 days from now. We are headed to the Buffalo airport to go to Ethiopia. Needless to say, I will be speaking on a section that I was assigned from Pastor Frank. We have kind of split the bill pretty evenly. I think we're 50-50, or he's probably, as far as the subject matter goes, it's probably 52-48. But I've been assured, and if you watch the Pastor Frank's videos on YouTube, he says, I'm full of words and you don't have to worry about your time. So I do have, I printed it out. This is one section, and I believe it is about 5 1/4. There's the last page of it. It's 5 1/4 pages long. So my notes are a little bit more than normal. Usually I look back on messages previous, and it's usually 2 pages, and I can get about 15 minutes out of that. So I think I'll be okay with some of the time. I'll be okay with my time. So I won't read this entire thing tonight. Usually I speak straight from the notes. It's very opposite of what Pastor Frank does. He has just kind of the outline, and then he goes from there, which it's very impressive. I don't know if I could do that just yet. I've had a lot of practice. I've been speaking for over 10 years. I'll have to look back. It's been more than a decade, though, that I've stood behind this pulpit every once in a while, and it's a privilege. It really is. So I wanted to tonight talk to you about 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, and it's the latter half of chapter 5. So I'm just going to start in verse 12, and we'll see kind of where we are on time when I get to the part that I wanted to get one thing out for sure, and if I need to do some more, I can do some more. And I put it on my iPad, but I have it on paper as well, so I'll try to go off the paper as best I can, because that's probably what I'm going to be using in Africa. So we're going to start in verse 12. So First Thessalonians 5, 12, and 13 says, "And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you, and are over you in the Lord, and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love for their works' sake, and be at peace among yourselves." And so another thing, actually, before I really get into that, I do want to acknowledge that I am not a pastor. I've never been to a Bible school other than the couple of times I was able to make it to convention early in my marriage. And I'm going to go to another country and speak to students that are becoming pastors. I I'm not qualified for that, but I have been qualified for that, if you understand my meaning. So I do it in humility, 100%. There's no pride in this whatsoever other than, boy, this is really cool. So that I've approached that with all these messages of, I'm speaking to pastors or pastors to be. I'm trying to teach them something. Whether they already know it or not, I don't know. I know most of you know most of the things I'm going to say. Paul in these verses shows there's a separation between a common church member and the in attendance and a group of people or of a person in a leadership role within the church. We see this in the blueprint of the Israelites when God says that the tribe of Levi is separate from the other 11 tribes, referencing Deuteronomy 10, 8, and 9. We don't have to go there, but that's my reference for that. Important pastoral lesson in this is that the pastor is the leader and is not held to the same standard as a lay person. They're held to the measure that they are set. Leviticus 4:3 shows us that the sin offering for a priest is the same as a sin offering for the entire congregation. So if the priest or if the pastor is committing a sin, the sacrifice for that was the same. It was just as big as if the whole congregation sinned. It's because it was practically the same thing. If the leader falls, everybody follows that leader. It's kind of like dominoes in that effect. The same thing goes for leadership in secular roles and in places as well. Leaders are held to that higher standard. They are supposed to have that bigger picture. They can see kind of from the top-down view a little bit more. And that's, again, is a good pattern we see that God has us. He sees the big picture, and we're just the one little part. And eventually we'll get to see a bigger chunk of the picture and maybe understand it. But lastly, at the end of those two verses, at the end of verse 13, I wanted to really highlight this because this was one I found very interesting. It says in that last sentence, if you could bring it up, 1 Thessalonians 5:13, and be at peace among yourselves. Now, of course, Frank said, hey, you're really good at the word studies. You should look into doing word studies while you're teaching Thessalonians. And I said, yeah, I could do that. The word peace, that's one of the fruits of the Spirit, right? Different word. It's not the same word as in Galatians. And I found that fascinating. I was like, okay, where else is it in the Bible? It shows up 3 times. That's one of them. The other one, the first time, law of first mention, I guess, Mark 9:50. Mark chapter 9, verse 50. Salt is good, but if the salt have lost its saltiness, wherewith will ye season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace with one another. Now that is the same Greek word. Salt is, of course, a natural preservative. It purifies and cleanses. In this sense, having salt refers to the inward presence of God's grace, which helps in the cleansing of our hearts and cleans away our moral decay. Another interesting fact, and I didn't know this one, and I know I've read it at least 3 times. Leviticus 2:13. Why is Jesus talking about salt? What's so important about salt? Look at Leviticus 2:13. Every oblation of thy meat offering shalt thou season with salt. Interesting. Neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant of thy God to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt. Interesting. Jesus is telling his followers to have salt in themselves. We are urged to become living sacrifices, purified from selfish ambitions and sin. When Jesus says it loses its saltiness, We understand this because the salt has lost its purity. It has been diluted with impurities, naturally. Allowing the world to influence us dilutes that living sacrifice that we need to have. And I just thought that was fantastic. We have a salt in our house, and it's called real salt. And it's got all kinds of minerals and specks and things in it. You can see, and sometimes I'll mix it into my drinking water because we have a reverse osmosis system at the house because we're on a well, and the salty water doesn't taste great coming out of the softener, but that purified water also has lost all of its saltiness in the opposite direction. So I need to add some to it to get the salt that you need for your day. But when you mix it in, you see all these little impurities swirling around the bottom, and it's very interesting to think, they're minerals, so they're actually supposed to be there. They're good for you. But you think of the purity of the salt that is being asked of the Levitical law to be salting the meat, is to purify, to cleanse the meat, to preserve it in an offering. It's something that, it's one of those things that it was kind of a luxury to have almost. It was important to have it, but you had to know you had to have it. One of those things. So that was the thing I found particularly interesting, finding that, just making that connection, and I love being able to do that. It catches me every time. It gives such a sense of wonder. So that was the big one I really wanted to catch, and I've only really been talking for 5 minutes, so I will continue. 1 Thessalonians 5:14, the next verse here. We exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient towards all men. The correction of the church members is always a difficult subject. I've heard it a few times from here and just in my personal talks with Pastor. I don't have much for stories on correcting church members myself because, again, I'm not a pastor. But I would bet if you were to ask one of the pastors here or all of that, they would all have some story of difficulties of feeling God calling them to speak to one of the church members to say, hey, we really need to reel this in. God's touching this on your life and you need to address it. And it doesn't typically go well from the stories I've heard. The word unruly in this verse means disorganized. And so that's me. As put together as I can look up here, I'm trying really hard. And I don't doubt that we all are a little disorganized here or there. The book of Genesis, we see the creation story. God is bringing that order to chaos in the first few verses, and Adam is created, and we read that he is charged with bringing order to the world, and that is the word subdue. Verse 28 of the first chapter said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion. This means we as humans are called to bring order to God's creation. We are in charge of it. We are the stewards of this world. This includes our own lives, which can easily, like I said, become very chaotic. When we plant our garden, which Beth Ann is already looking at and ordering seeds. If you have not started planting your garden, it is the 2nd or 3rd week of January. You better get going. You're late because Beth's already ahead of you. I can't wait to see what kind of peppers I'm going to get this year. But when we plant that garden in the spring, how many weed seeds did you guys get to plant? You get all your ragweed and your dandelions and your creeping Charlie. You got all those seeds ready to go, right? No, because it's already there. It's already in the ground. It's going to come up whether you want it to or not. In fact, it is going to come up, and you do not want it because it's not what you want there. So that disorder comes naturally. The next instruction is comfort the feeble-minded. I thought that was an interesting way to say that. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? This is in reference to different types of people. Paul acknowledges not every person in the church is going to be that soldier in the physical or spiritual sense. We're not all built the same. I think I had an accounting teacher in a business school I went to, and he was bald, and he said, God created so many perfect heads, the rest he covered with hair. That kind of reminds me of that. So, there are those who are stronger in certain aspects than others. In both Matthew and Mark, Jesus said, we'll always have the poor among us. That's another interpretation of the feeble-minded. This is the weaker of us. The lower in class, the lower in stature, whatever you want to call it. But for reference, we can put Matthew 26:11 and Mark 14:7. So really what the feeble-minded is referencing is those in need. And this is the same group of people that Paul is entreating the elders to take care of, is those in need. And the next word we have in there was the weak. So the feeble-minded support the weak. And this is more, like I said, again, it's different than just physical strength when it comes to the word used in the Greek translation. Of course, we take this in the spiritual sense as well. Support those who need the support. And of course, I put this caveat in here in my notes just to say, there are those who genuinely need the support, that genuinely need the help. And then there are those with the welfare mindset of, what can you do for me? What can I get out of you to help me? Even if it's just to get me 5 minutes down the road, what can you do for me that I can get the help? And so there's that welfare mindset that we have to be aware of, that we need to be loving, but we also need to be firm in, how much giving is too much. How much giving is just us being taken advantage of. Being kind, but also being good. There's a difference. I've spoken on that before too. There's a difference between kindness and goodness. Giving your kids a cookie after eating their dinner is good. It's kindness, but it's not good for them to be eating cookies for dinner. I think my kids would definitely try that at least once, and they'd probably get sick and be like, okay, that was a bad idea. Lastly, we read that Paul asks the elders to be patient toward all men. Patient toward all men. Now that is actually the fruit of the Spirit. That's the same word. And this is one, what's the other word for it? Long suffering. Patience, long suffering. What's the fruit? What is the physical aspect of it? Do we remember? As pastors always said it, long saffron. That's how I remember it now, because he said it that way the one time. I went, oh, okay, that makes sense. I get it. So this is one that I think that's when I say that I've had people tell me I've gotten better. I think I'm not perfect at it, obviously, but I think I've gotten better at patience. Not all the time. I'm not going to call myself great in any aspect of that. But saffron is one of the most expensive ones. We have to be tried in these things in order to build in these things, right? So when he's preaching patience, he says it's be patient with everyone. So not just the people in the church, but people outside of the church. So, like when I'm driving to get here or anywhere in the car where I can put my foot down and it really goes, I have to be patient with the people who are in front of me and going the speed limit because they're actually obeying the laws, and I didn't really want to do that tonight, it's weird switching from the big service van that is just this lumbering hulk of a van, and you're just kind of trying to get down the road without blowing the engine apart by putting your foot down. It's a little too hard. And then you get into the smaller car with the same size engine and half the weight, and it just, it's great. It's exhilarating, but you have to have patience with the traffic, right? So, but when he says be patient with all men, like I said, it's not just the people in the church, it's the community around you as well. And Pastor actually refers to this in the book. He says those are the non-believers as well. It's not just the believers. So being patient includes the unsaved. This is the hallmark virtue that is worked out through our own troubles and trials. And the saying I go off of is, I asked God for patience and he gave me something to be patient for. And we'll close it off here in just a couple more verses. We'll end. I'll start on verse 15. 1 Thessalonians 5:15 says, see that none render evil for evil unto any man, but ever follow that which is good, both among yourselves and to all men. And I'm just going to read a couple quick reference verses, and we'll close it off here, because this is just a continuation of the last point I was making. We take offense to something or someone has said or done, our next reaction is to hurt them back, right? I mean, an eye for an eye, right? That's scriptural. But it doesn't make it right, does it? It's such an easy answer. It's so easy to just, because it makes me feel good that I've gotten them to hurt too. It's not how we're supposed to do it. Jesus actually taught us to turn the other cheek, which I remember seeing a thing that said that wasn't meaning that you should give the opportunity to hit you again. Because when people would open hand hit, they'd hit this way with the back of their hand. I'm treating you as an inferior. You are below me. When you turn the other cheek, they have to hit you this way. Open hand. You are my equal, and I'm attacking you. There's a difference. So when he's saying to turn the other cheek, he's saying, no, you will treat me as an equal. If you decide to treat me this way, I am going to be equal to you. You are not above me. I think that's a very important thing, because a lot of people say, you should turn the other cheek. Well, yes. Because Jesus said, turn the other cheek, but that means I'm to be treated as an equal to this person. And I think a lot of that is also enshrined in our founding documents, to say that all men are equal. That actually wasn't even the verse I was going to reference. That just kind of came right to me, so I'll use that. But the one I was going to reference was Matthew 5:44. Says, I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. And then in Romans 12, I'm going to keep you typing up there, Frank. Romans 12:20 and 21. So that first one was Matthew 5:44. This is Romans 12:20 and 21. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in doing so, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Kill him with kindness, I think is an easy way to say that. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. So that's, like I said, it's easier. Our natural reaction is to get even. The unnatural and more godly reaction is to be kind to them. I mean, look at how Christ responded to the beatings and the torture that he was given. We're nowhere near that here in America. We're not harmed in any way like that. And he hung there with one of his last dying breaths saying, please forgive them. So it's a pretty good example. I think I will close it off there. I do have, like I said, I've got like 4 more pages of it, but I can throw in the finally my brethren, then we'll end it there, and I'll have Pastor come back up and add some remarks.